So this story that the New York Times published about Uber's assault problem is really fascinating, and we've been discussing it all week. So just in brief, a reporter from the New York Times was able to gain access to a bunch of internal records at Uber demonstrating that they have a significant problem with this type of assault and harassment for both female patrons, but also their drivers. So I know this isn't my normal content, but I find this whole situation really interesting. Uber announced at some point, I think before this was published, that they were going to have some sort of new feature where female passengers could choose female drivers. If you read this story, Uber recognized many years ago that they had an issue with harassment and assault complaints. And they actually did internal work to try to figure out how to prevent this from happening or see if they could recognize situations where this was happening. And a few things they recognize, I think, are kind of obvious. Solo female passengers, late at night, alcohol on board, outside of bars, that kind of thing. But they also identified some other things in relation to drivers that were men that had had prior complaints. And they came up with an algorithm that put those particular drivers lower on the list of potential drivers for that patron to try to prevent this from happening. But why are you allowing people to drive for your company if they have complaints about harassment, especially of multiple? And they were apparently going to roll out this feature of allowing women to choose female drivers, but there's internal document showing that when Trump won, they felt like it was not the political climate for that type of feature. Apparently not the climate to protect women from assault. Now, I imagine the only reason they're rolling it out now is because of this reporting right here, but it's actually an interesting problem. There's not a lot of female drivers for Uber, and they have a hard time getting female drivers because of concerns about assault. It's just foobar and messed up. And then finally, the funniest thing to me, funny, not funny, is the men that were making stamping feet videos saying how it's ridiculous that women should be able to pick female drivers, they should be able to pick male drivers then. Completely not recognizing that our reasoning for choosing a female driver is to keep us safe and free of harassment and assault, whereas if they chose a male driver, it's not for that. It's because of sexism and misogyny. So, interesting. Anyway, this is, I think, fantastic reporting. Listen to the daily podcast on this article or read the New York Times article. I think it's really interesting. And there's also a whole nother aspect of what kind of responsibility does a gig working app have to keep people using it safe. And that's another issue as well. Like, they're not even responsible to pay benefits to their drivers. Why are they responsible for the safety of their passengers? So many interesting issues here. I thought it was a really interesting read and brings up a lot of really horrifying points.